Hello and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. So today I wanted to discuss the easiest Debussy pieces with you and the most challenging. For those of you who have been playing piano for a while, you probably already know that Debussy's music leans mostly in an advanced direction. So if you're like in your first couple years of piano, this probably isn't going to be the music for you. Debussy usually takes until, I think the easiest of his pieces are around a grade 8 and 9 level. So we're basically going to be discussing easiest pieces that are in fact not easy at all. But if you are getting to a more advanced level and you haven't explored Debussy yet, or you're not sure where to start, hopefully this video should be able to help you out finding a good foothold and a good starting point with Debussy's music. I just want to make a quick note that I use 3 different music ranking systems to give you a sense of its level. So I use the Royal Conservatory of Music for the grades, as well as ABRSM when applicable. And I also use the Henley level system just because I find it effective, especially when we're talking about like the higher levels of music. I find it useful to divide Debussy's music into distinct categories, and we're going to discuss each of these in turn. And in general, they're ordered from easiest to most challenging. So you have the Children's Corner, you have the Preludes, the Deux Arabesques, Suite Bergamasque, you have A Stamps, Images pour le piano, Etudes, and then a few other miscellaneous pieces. Children's Corner was written between 1906 and 08, and it is definitely Debussy's easiest collection, suitable for early advanced players, so it's not easy. Even though it's called Children's Corner, these pieces aren't meant to be played by children. Rather, they're meant to invoke the vibe of childhood. So the easiest in the collection is probably The Little Shepherd. This is the one with the most unfortunate title, which is why in most editions it's usually called The Little Shepherd. And it is around an RCM grade 8 level. It's pretty jazzy, and I consider it to be like an easier version of Golliwogg's Cakewalk, which is a little more challenging. Golliwogg's Cakewalk is really, really cool though. It's jazzy, it's very popular, there's lots of crazy rhythms and dramatic contrasts. It's basically a lot of fun. Then you have Dr. Gratis ad Parnassum, I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that, is probably one of the most well-known in the collection, and it's very well loved. It's very jolly and humorous. And we have Jimbo's Lullaby, which was inspired by one of Debussy's daughter's toys, a toy elephant. It's kind of like a musical bedtime story. And then The Snow is Dancing is one of my favorites, but it's one of the most challenging in the set. It's deceptively difficult. It takes a lot of control to convey the really quiet volumes and the 16th note dancing snowflakes in this one. Debussy wrote 2 books of preludes, and the first one is slightly easier than the second one, mainly because the second one features Debussy's more mature writing style. They're both still quite the challenge though, and they're meant for more advanced players. That being said, one of the easiest pieces in the collection is The Girl with the Flaxen Hair, which is about a level 9. As for all the other ones, I kind of ordered them in easiest to most difficult in both books. You'll notice that in book 2, the easiest piece is around an RCM 9, but Henley 5 to 6, so it's a little bit more challenging than the start of the first book. But either way, these lists will all be available on the blog if you want to reference it later. I find it really interesting that the Royal Conservatory of Music and Henley have pretty different views on Deux Arabesques in terms of their difficulty. Henley considers these ones to be easier than the first pieces in the Preludes, and the RCM considers them to be more challenging. I personally consider them to be a little more challenging too, just because I feel like they're a little bit more mature. But anyway, these arabesques were among Debussy's very first piano compositions, and they're very, very famous. The first arabesque is a little easier than the second, but it requires some tricky 3 against 2 playing, polyrhythm. The second one is similar in style to a scherzo, meaning it's really, really fast and requires a lot of dexterity. Suite Bergamasque is less well known as a whole, but there's a certain individual movement within this that is very famous in the piano world, and that is Clair de Lune. This suite is meant to represent music from an old French court, and it ranges in mood from silly to really, really lovely. Like, obviously, Clair de Lune is a really lovely piece. Everything here is rated an RCM grade 10, although you see that there's a pretty wide range of Henley rankings here. Henley considers Clair de Lune the easiest of this set. The 3 movements of Prince are really awesome. The first movement has an Eastern flair, the second movement has a Spanish flair, and then the third movement depicts a vicious rainstorm. But despite the awesomeness of these pieces, they're all very difficult at an RCM ARCT level, which is the level beyond grade 10. The 6 compositions and images were written during Debussy's middle period between 1901 and 1905. These pieces are beautiful, but again, they're very challenging. They all come in at an RCM ARCT level. And again, you can see the easiest one of the set is the second one in the first set, Hommage à Rameau. Written in 1901, Pour le Piano has 3 movements. The first 2 movements, the Prelude and Sarabande, are around a level 10 difficulty, although the RCM ranks the Prelude at ARCT. But the final toccata movement is very, very challenging. Henley puts it at 8, and just for context, the highest Henley level is 9. And like many other high-level Debussy pieces, a certain amount of musical maturity is required to pull these off. So someone who's just starting might be able to, like, I don't know, recreate the notes, imitate it, learn it, but there's so much subtlety of shading and texture here that makes it, well, it makes it really easy to play really badly. We won't go into depth on Debussy's 12 etudes because they're all around the same level, which is an RCM ARCT level, and they're all really challenging and suitable only for pretty advanced piano players. Henley categorizes them between levels 7 to 8 and 8 to 9, so almost up there with the highest, most challenging piano repertoire that exists. Then we just have a few miscellaneous pieces here, the easiest of which is Album Leaf. Debussy composes in 1915, and it's just 2 pages. And I do think it's probably Debussy's easiest piano piece, or at least close to, or comparable to the easiest pieces in Children's Corner. It's technically simpler than some of his other compositions, but it's also less musically complicated. It has a less intricate texture, more of a straightforward rhythm, and so on. Then we have Reverie, which is also one of the most accessible Debussy pieces. It's really beautiful. Apparently Debussy didn't love it, but I think he's crazy. This piece is actually a really good gateway piece to try before attempting Clair de Lune. And then finally we have the Bohemian Dance, which is around a RCM 9, Henley 5 to 6. This one's a little on the easier side just because it doesn't require the musical maturity of some of Debussy's later pieces. So after all of that, here is the final list of the easiest pieces by Debussy. So I basically took the easiest pieces from various categories, smushed it all together, and if you were just starting to get into Debussy, maybe you're at like a, I don't know, grade 8 or 9 level and you're ready for some Debussy, you might want to follow a trajectory that looks something like this. You start with Album Leaf, you work your way through some of the pieces in Children's Corner, and then so on. And that is all for today's video. Hopefully this gave you a better idea of where to start with Debussy's music if you're at that level. And as I mentioned earlier, you can just hop on over to the blog pianotv.net, take a look at the associated blog post, and all of these lists will be on that page if you want to use this as kind of like a guide for learning Debussy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next video. And then you have Jimbo's Lullaby, which is kind of, I'm going to say that again.